Hey guys, you're watching the Best Practice Show where we take a look at the best business practices from the best dental practices all over the world. If you're looking at improving your practice, you know that the numbers are very important. And today we're going to be talking about a metric that a lot of dentists don't pay attention to that's critical to the financial health of your practice. Do not miss this. I got my good friend, Curtis Marshall from Dental Intel. So do me a favor, grab a pen and hit the share button. We'll see you in a second. Hey guys, thanks for watching the Best Practice Show. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love the comments, love the feedback, love your suggestions for shows, and we're going to do the best we can to get all of this together for you in a timely fashion. And so keep sending them to us. And as we continue down the path of how to improve our practice, one of the things that you know already is that you have to be able to look at really good data and improving your practice, because the data doesn't lie. It also doesn't have any emotion attached to it. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most important metrics that a lot of dentists don't pay attention to, which is the restorative visit. And so I got my good friend, our data expert, chief engineer, Curtis Marshall. Curtis, how are you, man? Thanks for being on.
I'm doing so good, Kirk. Thanks for having me on again. Love speaking with you and diving into this. And you're absolutely right. One thing that we typically focus on is production. And not realizing that restorative visits is very, very important. If I'm seeing less people in restorative visits, but I'm doing more production, that's good. But as soon as I get those big procedures done, now I have less restorative visits. So our main focus that we're going to be looking at today is making sure we're improving our restorative visits and not just restorative dollars, because it will follow.
Absolutely. And if you're new to the conversation, Curtis is one of the chief engineers or experts behind a platform called Dental Intel, and they came up with the profitability formula. And Curtis, I think it'd probably be good for those people, if you're jumping on the conversation for the first time, to know what the profitability formula is. And in that, you'll recognize how important this particular component is, which is visits. And there's two particular visits in every dental practice. So Curtis, take us into that and give us a little background.
Yeah, absolutely, Kirk. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to share with you a quick little, it's the profitability formula, just so that everybody can see it. Awesome. And it is right here. If you're seeing it on the screen, it's simple. Rather than trying to figure out where to improve, this makes it so that you know exactly where to improve. It's called the profitability formula. We have 4 steps. It's visits, or your production per visit, or your collection percentage, or your overhead. We want to increase visits, production per visit, collection percentage, and decrease overhead. By doing this, we increase profits. Now, Kirk, you mentioned oftentimes, and you've seen it in offices, if we just increase each one of these by 3 to 5%, what's going to happen to our profits?
Yeah, you're going to exponentially increase your profits. As you can see, every little adjustment you make in this all-important equation adds to more results further down the line. And so, you've learned this maybe the hard way, and we've heard it so many times. We don't care what you produce, because there are a lot of super high producers. At the end of the day, it's what you keep and what you give up in order to get there, because that's the new formula. The new formula in all of the world of business is really managing the data so that you can get the result that you want. And if you're a private care practitioner watching this, this is an opportunity for you, because you're probably sitting there complaining about PPOs and DSOs and everything else. Well, let me help you understand. When DSOs are using this exact formula and the software to improve every practice they own. And so as a private care practitioner, you can't sit there anymore and go, oh, I don't pay attention to it. No, you have to, so that you know how to incrementally improve every component of your business, and you don't make yourself crazy and the rest of your team crazy. So knowing your numbers is critical. No different then having all of the information in front of you to do great restorative dentistry, it's responsible to have as much data as possible when you do dentistry, and it's no different with your business.
And one thing, the powerful thing behind this, especially for the solo doctor, is that when we focus on these metrics, what improves is patient care, Kirk.
Right.
This has been something that's been blowing offices out of the water, is understanding once they know, oh, I need to increase my production per visit. That's what I need to increase on. Or I need to increase my visits, and more specifically, my restorative visits. Mm-hmm. What just happened to the patient care?
Got better.
It's increasing. Once we know exactly where to improve, we're able to do better. And that's in our, like you said, in any form of our lives, whether that's being a father, whether that's being a friend, whether that's being at work. Well, obviously we're talking about work here, but wherever that is in our life, if we know exactly where to improve, things jump up tremendously. So that's cool. Thanks for reminding us about that.
Absolutely. And so take us in it. Today we're going to be talking about restorative visits. Now there's two visits that you keep track of and we all keep track of in a dental practice. It's hygiene visits and restorative visits. Can you help us understand the difference between the two? That might not be obvious.
Yeah, and no, that's a really good thing. Now, as we talk about these visits, hygiene and restorative visits, oftentimes in dentistry for the last 100 years, we've associated hygiene visits to who?
To the hygienist, correct?
Hygienist.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? So just realize, though, what we're going to be talking about here is as the practice, how many restorative and hygiene visits, because we still want to track. Let's say you're doing a big IV sedation case, mm-hmm. and in that, you're also going to do a quick cleaning, right?
Right.
Well, you just did a hygiene visit, doctor, possibly, or maybe you brought in the hygienist, but maybe you did it. And with that being said, we want to start to be able to notice within the practice, hey, am I doing how many hygiene visits, not necessarily by hygienist, and how many restorative appointments are we doing? So
right.
that just be aware of that moving forward.
Yeah, and these are two very unique metrics because when you do a restorative visit, a lot of dentists don't think about this, but you said it earlier, you're one less now. And you've got to always have more in front of you. The other thing too is these work in tandem is a lot of times you do a restorative visit, but the patient comes into your office and they don't have a hygiene visit, which we talked about in previous episodes. And that's a big problem too, because you're only looking at new patients and how do we present treatment and get them to say yes. Well, these patients are unattached and they float into the universe, and you don't really build a professional practice because you're not retaining these people. So paying attention to future visits, not only in hygiene, but restorative is critically important. And that's what we're going to be looking at today.
So critical. Thanks for bringing that up. So let's go ahead and look at a data real quick and let's see what's happening. So right now, what we're going to look at this is the visits for the month of February in this practice, right? We're able to see how many they completed and how many they scheduled. It looks like this office is not completing as many, which means that there's a lot of broken appointments. Maybe it was the flu season. I don't know, but something was happening with broken appointments. But what we really want to be aware of are the amount of total visits. So if we're able to see here, these are all visits. All visits. What do we notice, Kirk, between 2016 and 2017?
Well, in 2017, we've got more visits, almost more visits per month, except for when you look at October and November, that's very interesting. So
it's virtually the same. Now, you saw that a few months, like December, we had more visits mm-hmm. in 2017, but in 2016, we had more in October. There's a dotted green line and a dotted blue line.
They're about the same.
It looks green-blue because it's virtually the same.
Right.
Okay. Now let's go ahead and look at restorative. So we're now going to look at how many visits we had with the restorative. What do you now notice?
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, very interesting. This is like wait a second. We can start to track it by not just all visits and hygiene visits, but restorative visits. Okay. We have restorative visits here that are lower in 2017 than 2016.
Mm-hmm.
why. First off, we want to know why, what's happening. And we're going to jump into that in a second. But Kirk, here's where it simply blows my mind. If we have less visits in an office for restorative, what do you think is going to happen with production on restorative?
Well, unless the case size is increasing, the production is going to drop, correct?
Correct. So what do we know? 2017, the green line, just like you gave the differentiating of, is saying, hey, look, we actually increased our case size because I know we did more production, restorative production in 2017, but we saw less people. Now, feel free if you're driving, even if you're in your home, but by raise of hands, who would like to do less restorative visits and more production?
Well, I think, yeah, that's pretty much a no-brainer.
Okay. That's a no-brainer. I think everyone's going to raise their hand. All right, now let's think about this. What if you were able to do the same amount of restorative visits, not decrease, so stay the same, and exponentially, like you mentioned, we're now in keeping something similar. Our production in that case is going to be way higher, right? So not only is it we can do better, we can do much better, and we can take care of our patients. In this office, they didn't think that they had a problem with visits. They're like, we did more restorative visits.
Right.
But they didn't. The only reason why they thought they did is because they did more production.
Right.
They did less visits. If they would have kept their visits the same or higher, hopefully higher, right? Then, well, depending on your office, I guess, some people may not want it higher. They want it to be the same. But if you go high, if you keep it the same or higher, now you're taking better care of your patients and the profitability of your practice will increase. Any thoughts here, Kirk? But this is something that is like brand new, that's able to see quickly without pulling a bunch of reports. I can see month over month, year over year, what I need to do to improve.
Absolutely. And that's my first thought, is that every dentist thinks they're doing really, really well and they don't have any problems. But the fact is when you pull the data, you're like, oh my goodness, like I thought we were going up in visits. We weren't. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're going to see is when you look at all of these metrics, they are all intertwined. So if you're going to look at something like restorative visits, one of those things that could be greatly impacting that is the amount of cancellations and no-shows that happen. You reduce those, and those naturally incline along, coupled with the fact that your production per visit's probably increasing. Now you've got the exponential impact of how an adjustment on each one of these makes an incredible net result at the end. And again, at the end of the day, and Curtis, I'm so glad, because as we have these conversations, I always sometimes take it for granted that the patient care is a given. But I think what we have to constantly introduce into these is that patient care is really, at the end of the day, the most important, because when these people are coming to your office, they're staying, they're consistently doing what is in the best interest of them. Everybody wins. And as a result, the practice wins too.
That's what it boils down to. And that's our focus. I know that's that's what I love about working with ACT and you, Kirk, is that you guys truly care about the patient. You want the patients to become better. And by looking at data, our main goal is to increase patient care and team performance. We want to make sure the teams are doing a better job and that they're not working as hard, meaning stressed out. And then the second thing is making sure that the patients get better taken care of.
Right.
You pointed out an amazing portion about broken appointments. Look at this. Our broken appointments for restorative, you can now see exactly, hey, how well are my restorative appointments showing up? We can see that 68 in this practice broke, right? And then have an action plan of saying, hey, who's going to follow up with these people? And that's something for a different day. But ultimately, before you're able to increase, you need to know where you are at. You can't you can't improve if you don't know where you're at.
Right. Now, when you look at this too, 68 broken appointments out of a possible, 533, that is a significant number. You're talking more than 10% are broken, which is a major problem in your practice. And so reducing the effect of that on your practice is dramatic, because when you don't have somebody in the chair, it's not no profit, it's negative profit. And so you're making it up on the other end when you do have patients in the chair, and that's just too stressful. So having these numbers in front of you, it's your own GPS system. They bring so many great questions to the surface. Like, why is that? And the thing to remember as you look at these numbers in your practice is every number has a story. There's a story behind those 68 broken appointments. So, hey, I just have this question because I'm looking at this where there aren't any, it doesn't look like there are any uncategorized, or maybe there are. What would uncategorized visits, what would that be? They just weren't tagged to a particular provider? Is that what usually happens in the software?
Yeah, so it is. So restorative, what we're looking at here is restorative are any appointment that has restorative or cosmetic type procedures attached.
Right.
Hygiene would be your cleanings and perio.
Right.
Uncategorized would be your patients that have, like, you have the code P90X. It's not an ADA restorative code, and it's not, or it has no code. There's no code on it on the appointment. Uncategorized just basically means we're not able to categorize it by hygiene or restorative.
Right. Right. Okay. So I'm glad you clarified that. Now, also too, if you have an associate in your office, this is a very important thing to take a look at too.
Oh, geez. I didn't even think about taking it down that road. Keep going, Kirk.
Yeah.
Now,
because
if you have an associate, open your ears right here. I know where it's going to go.
Well, here's
Open
the thing. You all know this. If you own a practice and you're a doctor, you are thinking sometimes about what transition might be. Now, sometimes it includes an associate, sometimes it doesn't. But if you're going to bring an associate in, the bottom line is you're going to subsidize the associate's salary with yours for a while until it gets going. And you can't just look up every couple months and go, how are we doing? No, it's got to be getting healthier every day and every week, which means the number of visits attached to the provider who is the associate needs to be going up, because you can't have any skin in the game on just having the production conversation. They actually have to be building a practice within your practice of patients that are getting scheduled in their columns. Now, I'm not going to say this is true of all associates, but there are a lot of times where I'll go into a practice and I see an associate and he's back there looking at Facebook. And, he's got like 3 hours open. I go, what are you doing?
He's calling his wife, right? Or
yeah.
calling,
I go, what?
Calling her kids.
What's on Facebook? He's like, look at this funny cat video. You're like, okay, buddy, listen, if you're here, you've got to be responsible for your numbers going up. And there's a lot of ways you can do that. You can get creative. You can start talking to patients in hygiene. You can go over and meet with the periodontist. Look, if I've got a number that I'm responsible to fill this box where it's only going up, now we can have an intelligent conversation about how I'm bringing value to the practice. Look, I'm growing it, not only in production, because I'll guarantee you, and Curtis, tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm a young associate and the number of visits are going up restoratively in my schedule, the production is going up also.
No, 100%, Kirk. And if the associate understands we don't, not just we need to do better, but we need more people.
Right.
Well, there's only a couple ways to get more people. We can either get more patient and more new patients, so we can send doctor out and go stand in a tooth costume on the side of the road and get more patients in the office,
right?
Or, and many other things,
mm-hmm.
Or we can do more production on the people that we are seeing.
Right.
It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an example. I got a patient who's coming in. I'm a doctor, the new associate. I'm doing a hygiene exam. The hygienist already got a future hygiene appointment scheduled. If I want another visit, if I want to increase production, how can I get another visit in there?
You can keep the patient in your schedule somehow.
On your schedule.
Right.
Let's say you go in there and you're not quite confident, and you're just like, you know what? There's a few things on here, but I'm really busy. I got to get back to my wife, or I got to get back on Facebook, and you don't diagnose treatment.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot improve restorative visits if you're not diagnosing.
Right.
You just can't do it. So that's this after being aware of restorative visits, we're going to start talking in a moment about diagnosing. How many people are you diagnosing?
Right.
The whole team, including your associates, must and need to understand that we need more visits.
Right.
And that's today we're talking about the restorative visits.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I see it, there's really kind of three epidemics that are happening in dentistry. It's number one, it's attracting and keeping patients, and it's the keeping that's more the epidemic. The second one is diagnostics are so pitifully low, where people aren't talking about diagnostics at all, which we'll get into a little bit. I was asked into some like, buddy, your diagnostics are so low. And they go, I know, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And my argument is always dentists could do better if they just slow down talking about what you see. Something's entered in the treatment plan. And then lastly is the number of broken appointments. When you couple them, it's the perfect storm that keeps your practice from growing. And then you fall victim to the winds like PPOs and, oh, I can't find great people and I got to work extra hours. The whole challenge for you to create a professional practice in regular hours is to get people to come to you because of you. You keep them, and then you provide better care and you minimize the opportunity for them to cancel on you. And it's the perfect way to build a great practice. So give us more perspective on the, oh, wait.
So, and I hope you guys wrote those three things down because those are really important. And Kirk is absolutely correct on understanding those three things within the practice. We want to make sure we get more people and that we're diagnosing more, right? We need to understand that. Mm-hmm. So why we even came up with, like, you would think that, hey, as we talk about metrics, why are we even focusing about restorative? Because it's so not looked at in the past. This hasn't been something we looked at, is the amount of visits that we have on the restorative.
Right. Absolutely. A lot of times it's looked at as retroactive data or lagging data, where you just look at what each producer produced last month. But there's a piggyback metric that's probably in some cases even more important, is the number of visits that you have in the schedule for each doctor restoratively.
So, and then as far as those two metrics when we're going to go over 4 total today. Okay. The first one is making sure that we increase restorative visits. Okay. The second one is making sure that we decrease restorative broken appointments, because if we decrease restorative broken appointments, then we're going to have more restorative appointments.
Yeah. What's a good goal to increase your restorative visits per month? Would you say? Just, you talk about goal setting for a lot of these practitioners, but I know not everybody fits the same category, but if I'm a dentist watching this, how many visits would I set as a goal to improve per month? Is there a percentage, a number of visits?
Good question, Kirk. Now on this, as far as improving restorative visits, mm-hmm. and depending on however you want to track, it's fine. Dental Intel does a great job here, but it's however you want to track it, you want to increase it. It's first off, it's based off of capacity. Right. If you can't see more people in your office, the only other thing to do is either to grow more chairs, extend your hours. If you are fine, you feel totally comfortable as far as your production, then one thing you may want to be focusing on is seeing a few less visits, but doing more production per visit. Yep. And what I mean by that is getting rid of a PPO, right? Yeah. If you're stuck with, whoa, I did not turn off my phone. If you don't want to grow capacity as far as chairs or hours or anything like that, yet you want to take better care of your patients, you're going to want to drop a PPO, because that means you're going to give more services to your existing patients and see less visits, but more production. So as far as a goal, Kirk, ultimately, you need to know where you're at first. You have to know where you're at, and then you need to know your goals. Based on where you're at and where you want to go, that's your increase, and it might be a decrease.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just one of the most brilliant points you brought up, because Most dentists think to grow, I got to open up capacity and add other ops. And for some people, that is not the right decision for them. They have a hard enough time managing 16 members, and the whole idea of managing 22 just freaks them out. The cool part about knowing these numbers now is you can determine how many days you want to work. And then you can also say, hey, look, this is it. And get yourself to capacity as fast as possible. And just like Curtis says, now you play with the dials and slow down some of the PPOs, maybe increase what you do for patients, but you're now in control. You're now in control. Now you don't have to do the whole, well, I got to work 220 days next year, and now we're going to be open Saturdays, which is really just poor business thinking. Now with the data, we have the ability to think better, and we now can diagnose where our problems are at and create the type of practice that best suits your vision.
So key, because oftentimes we think, oh, doctor down the road, he did this and that's really good, so that's what I have to do. Well, you're two different offices.
Right.
You know, and that's one thing that ACT does so well is what they do is they don't just jump in and say, we do this for everyone and we do the exact same thing. No, they dive in and they look at your stuff and say, okay, based off of your practice, this is what you need to be focusing on.
Right.
And that's why we break up these training, podcast things to say, hey, today we're going to be talking about restorative visits. You may be killing it, doctor, in restorative visits. Right. But another doctor might be hurting, and so we want to talk about it today.
Yeah, and I know we're kind of beating this horse to death, but I don't think you can beat it enough because it's so important. If you're a dentist listening to this, do you want a $3 million practice that has an 85% overhead, because there are a lot of them out there? Or do you want a $1.2, $1.5 million practice with a 50% overhead? Now, that's a no-brainer for me, but you pick, because I'll just tell you one insight. That $3 million practice that has an 85% overhead, there's not one fun thing going on there, not one. And your only answer is more. So you got to know what happens within the practice in order to improve it. And now you've improved not only your care, but everybody else's life.
Kirk, can I have the $3 million practice with 50% overhead?
I'll take that one too. But you know what? I would say that one was created completely by intention, because anyone that has a $3 million practice with a 50% of overhead knows their numbers. They know exactly what they're doing, and they've done that intentionally. And they've probably been looking at these numbers for years in order to get there.
That's so true.
The numbers tell the whole story.
Yeah.
Or a lot of the story. So keep going on that. You talked about two numbers. You mentioned restorative visits, and then you mentioned restorative broken. Mm-hmm. And then you said there were four numbers we were going to go through.
The third number right here is your diagnostic percentage. If I want to increase my restorative numbers, I need to make sure that we are diagnosing patients.
Right.
Okay.
It's the Wayne Gretzky, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Oh, thank you. I love that quote. Wayne Gretzky is one of those amazing guys who I hope we get more of those type of people in this world in the future. But what so true. You can't improve if you don't shoot more. Right. And even wrote an article one time about Kobe Bryant, how winners lose more than losers lose. Winners lose more because they try more. Losers lose more because, did I say winners lose more? Yeah, winners lose more because they try more, meaning they're shooting a lot more. They're hitting a lot more shots. But losers just lose because they don't try anymore.
Right. Now, I do get a lot of questions on this one, Curtis. Can you define this? Like, how is the diagnostic percentage calculated? It's calculated by the number of exams that the doctor performs, and then if something is entered into the treatment planner. Is that right or is that wrong?
That's how this is being calculated. Yep.
Okay.
So what we're looking at here is they had 800 exams, and 386 of those people got diagnosed with some type of restorative procedure.
Right.
They went into their treatment planner.
Yeah, this is a huge problem in dentistry, and everyone thinks, oh, mine is up there in the 80s. But the truth of it is, Curtis, give us some perspective. Where's the average practice at with diagnostic percentage?
This is a higher I pulled in this practice because right now they're doing a good job. But typically, we're seeing 20 to 25%.
20 to 25%, which is crazy low. That means 1 in every 5 patients a dentist sees in the United States is actually diagnosed. Curtis, that must mean that all the other 4 are healthy. They don't have anything wrong. They're perfect patients.
Yeah, which is not the case. And the big reason why we see now I'd like to show you something here, Kirk.
Okay.
If we're looking at this, and this is unfortunately these guys too, but if we look at this in 2017, it's a roller coaster. It's going up and down. The dollars that we're producing per exam, it's going up and down. This should not, even if they took a week off, this should always be the same because this is an average.
Okay.
The reason why we see this going up and down, both diagnostic and a few other things on restorative going up and down, is because we diagnose a lot, and then we get really busy because we have all this treatment. And then we come into an exam and we diagnose less because we're hurrying through it, or we're not we're not presenting very well. And then we're hurting, and then it increases again. I mean, it's an awful cycle because we've never tracked it before. We've never tracked how often are we diagnosing.
Yeah. And why is diagnosis, I gave you my thought, but why is diagnosis so low in dentistry? Do you have any thought?
So one is because of that ebb and flow, right?
Okay.
So it's got, hey, I'm working hard. The second one is really confidence. Unfortunately, a lot of times the doctors, and a lot of you doctors may say, hey, this is not me. But when you're looking into a mouth and you got your friend that you've been seeing forever, Miss Jones, and her kid, right? And there's a small little cavity and they always want to come back and you want them to come back for hygiene. You're like, I'm going to put a watch on this
Right.
tooth, right? I'm not going to treatment plan anything. I'm just going to put a watch on this tooth and see what's happening.
Now, go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah. If there's treatment that needs to be diagnosed, diagnose it.
Right.
Tell the patient, as your professional, this is what's happening.
Right.
You can choose to accept it or not accept it, but I'm going to tell you.
Right. Now, would my thinking be right in this? Because as I look at this, and as I've looked at this with many practices, everyone's so hot into the topic of treatment acceptance. Oh, 95% of my patients say yes, which isn't true anyway. But bottom line is this, is that if you're going to look at this and improving what happens in your operatories, diagnostics is where we start. Because let's say, like this doctor here, am I reading this right? They're 63% case acceptance. Yep. Now, can you imagine their diagnosis was 42%? What if their diagnosis went to 55%? You're talking about an exponential impact on case acceptance, right? Yep. Because we're not going to improve case acceptance at all. Just keep them the same way that he's been talking to patients. But now by the pure fact that we're talking about more, documenting more, and presenting more, the yeses are going to be more naturally down the line, correct?
Absolutely. Now, if that starts to decrease though, then and we're going to go over it, by the way, teams out there, we're going to dive deep into case acceptance here in about 2-3 weeks. And it's going to be a lot of fun, but ultimately, we start tracking diagnostic, and then you also want to track acceptance because that's going to ebb and flow too. But if we can level both of those off, we increase patient care, and our teams are happier. They're less stressed. They're not yelling at us. We're not yelling at them, and they're going home on time. I mean, all these things are happening if we're able to see where to improve and not just go do better. Let's stop doing better and let's improve in certain metrics.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So
any other questions on diagnostic, or we're going to hit our last one? I think we got to start wrapping up.
Let's hit our last one and we'll wrap it up.
Okay. Last one regarding restorative case acceptance. Okay. Now we know that new patients come in and some come in for hygiene and some are just limited exams.
Yes.
Right. On both cases, new patients should have a future unless they have they come in, they never have had a cavity before. But for the most part, a new patient comes in and there should be a future restorative appointment.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
Okay. This office saw 130 new patients.
Mm-hmm.
Now they presented to 130 patients. because they're presenting restored. This was not the best example that we don't see this very often. They are always diagnosing, putting in the treatment planner, fluoride and a few things. So they're doing they're trying to improve. But typically what we're seeing nationwide here, Kirk, is that out of our new patients that we're seeing, we are only diagnosing them 30 to 40%. Now it's higher than the restorative, but it's only 30 to 40% of the time.
Why is that? Do you have any idea?
Those two things, once again, I'm in a hurry,
right?
Or I'm a little nervous. I want them to like me. So I'm not going to tell them they have treatment. I'm going to get them next time. Right.
Okay.
And it may not be something that's at the forefront of your mind, but it's definitely in there somewhere if your number's low. Right. So the fourth number to be looking at is making sure that your new patients are coming back for restorative treatment. And obviously they have to be diagnosed.
Yeah, now just draw the line for us between what gets accounted for. A lot of this would be intuitive, but I want you to add some perspective. When I look at diagnostic percentages in the restorative elective case category and hygiene, could you make it as simple as whatever happens in the hygiene room is considered diagnostic for hygiene services, or are those percentages attached specifically to the provider? So
good. Remember when we clarified at the beginning, hygiene visits and restorative visits are not necessarily hygiene. We're looking at it as the office itself. Right. So these are hygiene procedures being diagnosed.
Okay. Just
Sealants,
good.
Fluoride, SRPs, right? These are restorative. Everything else, all other ADA codes except for hygiene codes. So this is how often are we diagnosing restorative and how often are you diagnosing hygiene?
Great. So those would all come straight. They would be extracted directly from procedure codes within the computer, whether you have EagleSoft, Dentrix, Open Dental, that's where that's going to come from.
Perfect. Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Good stuff, buddy. Well,
let's start increasing or maintaining restorative visits. By doing this, you're going to do more production, but most importantly, you're going to increase the patient care.
Yeah, absolutely. And, not only are you going to do that, but you're going to increase the value of your practice. This is the constant theme that comes up, is that if I peek into your practice and just open it up, I'm going to see a very healthy business growing in numbers of people that are coming and staying because the trend is like this. At the end of your career, that becomes an incredible point for increased valuation of the business you're trying to sell, which may be not your goal today, but it's an important piece of building any business. You want to make sure that it's more valuable, after you've touched it for all these years and you hand it off to whoever takes it next. So great stuff.
Unfortunately, Kirk, I mean, you've seen this too many times as well, is that when somebody sells, it's worth much less than all that hard work for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years that they've been a dentist.
Right.
It's not worth the value of the practice as it could be, because it's not that you're not taking good care of your patients, it's that you're not able to see where can I improve on taking better care of my patients.
Right. And let's talk about the reality of being a 62 or 63-year-old dentist. Most of those patients that you have are going to be close to your age because of your career. And if you're not really intentional about this, a lot of those people die off or move, and you don't fortify the practice and make sure that the average age of your patient base is decreasing, which means it's growing in numbers. I had a dentist a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I got 1,300 patients. We pulled it. It's in the 800s. He's like, oh my gosh, a lot of these people are dead. They've moved away. And that's when you start to freak out a little bit. You're like, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So knowing your numbers consistently will never put you in a place like that where it will be an element of surprise. You'll see it continuously growing and improving. And also, let me add this one last layer. It gives you a good sense of purpose when things are making progress. It's not about the money. It's not about the patients. It's the fact that things are getting better every year, and you have proof because they're in the numbers.
Very good, Kirk. Once again, the four things: making sure to increase restorative appointments, decrease restorative broken appointments, increase diagnostic, and increase your new patients coming back in for restorative.
Amen, brother. Dude, you're the best. I learned so much. I got some good stuff. Now we're going to do this again. You know, as you're going to see our series with Curtis, we're adding, you know, more and more education around each one of these metrics. That's critically important. If you know, you could obviously dig into your computer and figure out these numbers on your own, or you could just do it with Curtis's app. It's the craziest, easiest thing in the world. It takes 5 minutes. And he's given us a complimentary offer to the people that are watching this, that if you want to sample this, it's free. It's no charge. It takes 5 minutes. You can go to www.actdental.com/snapshot, fill out your information, put it in there, and one of the team members at Dental Intel will plug it into your computer. It takes 5 minutes. You'll be able to see all of these things, and it'll give you great peace of mind that you know the numbers on your practice. So, Curtis, I'm so grateful, buddy.
Hey, hope everybody out there's increased patient care and team performance. Thanks, Kirk.
Amen, brother. So, hey, thank you guys for watching, and hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you did. If you did, please hit the share button, share with your friends, because we'd love to give everybody great information like this. And until we see you next time, keep watching the Best Practice Show. You guys have a great rest of your day.